At 8 months pregnant, my long-distance husband, worried I'd get jealous, replaced his young, beautiful secretary with an old woman. Then for our anniversary, he sent a 9-carat diamond ring from overseas. Everyone bashed, telling me how lucky I was. But I only needed one glance at the ring before I coldly dialed Zachary's number. I don't want this ring, and I don't want to see you again. We're getting a divorce. Hush fell over the room. On the other end of the line, Zachary's voice trembled. What? What did I do wrong? I've spent years flying back and forth for you, showering you with gifts. You're pregnant and sensitive. So I even fired the secretary I'd had for years, and hired a woman old enough to be my mother. And this ring, Jane, it's one of a kind. Have I not been good enough to you? My face was a mask. Then, you can give the ring to your new secretary, and spend the rest of your life with her. We're done. That night, Zachary boarded a red-eye flight, enduring more than 10 hours in the air to come back. Came straight to my hospital room. The moment he appeared, I pulled the divorce papers from my bag and laid them in front of him. Since you're here, I said calmly, you can just sign these. Zachary's face was ashen, his voice raspy. Honey, you're just saying this to get me to come home, right? I'm here now, you can stop. The other patients in the ward started whispering. A divorce? What a shame. Look at her belly. She's about to pop. I know her. Her husband works abroad, but he's always sending gifts to the hospital. He treats her like a queen. She's just being difficult. I heard he sent her a 9-carat diamond yesterday, and she wasn't happy with it. The murmurs of condemnation grew louder, and the glares of disgust became impossible to ignore. Everyone saw me as a spoiled, ungrateful wife taking a stand for the poor. Wrong Zachary. And why wouldn't they? For years, Zachary had been the perfect husband. We were childhood sweethearts, each other's first love. He spent every day finding new ways to make me smile. When the company needed someone to manage the new branch in the States, I was hesitant to send anyone else. He volunteered. Immediately after that, he practically lived on red-eye flights, shuttling between 2 countries, collecting hundreds of boarding passes just for a few hours with me. When I got pregnant, he replaced his young, gorgeous secretary with an older woman just to put my mind at ease. My friends and family all said I'd hit the jackpot, but that was all in the past. I turned away from him, my voice unwavering. Think whatever you want. This divorce is happening today. His eyes reddened. He grabbed my hand, his voice cracking as he begged, Jane, please don't do this. If you don't like the ring, I'll buy you something else. I'll quit my job. I'll stay here with you until the baby comes. Okay. Not okay. I pulled my hand from his grasp, my gaze like ice. The only thing I want from you is a divorce. Seeing my resolve, Zachary's new secretary, Linda, rushed forward, her voice shrill. Mrs. Lewis, how can you do this to him? He dropped a multi-million-dollar contract and flew for over 10 hours on a red eye, just to appease your little tantrum. And that ring, do you have any idea what he went through to have a top designer create that for you? Are you just going to throw his devotion away like it's trash? I shot her a look of pure contempt. You're just a secretary. What gives you the right to speak here? And since you feel so sorry for him, why don't you marry him instead? Linda's face flushed a deep mottled red. Mrs. Lewis, what are you saying? Look at my age. You can't be jealous of me. Zachary's brow furrowed. Honey, isn't your pregnancy making you a little paranoid? Me and Linda? How is that even possible? The onlooker sized Linda up and couldn't help but snicker. Is this woman insane? She's jealous of a grandma? That lady has to be in her 50s, maybe 60s. Her husband is young, handsome and rich. If he wanted to cheat, he'd have women throwing themselves at him? Why would he pick someone old enough to be his mother? Exactly. How desperate would he have to be to go for her? The laughter grew and Zachary's expression filled with exasperation. He gripped my hand tightly, his voice a low, pleading whisper. I hired an older secretary specifically so you wouldn't get jealous. How can you still think the worst of me? We have so much history, Jane. Please don't do this. We can't get a divorce. I stared at him and let out a cold laugh. Fine, then fire her. Zachary froze, a flicker of hesitation in his eyes. Mrs. Lewis. Linda suddenly dropped to her knees in front of everyone, tears streaming down her face. My son has a terminal illness and my husband is dead. She sobbed. Mr. Lewis only gave me this job out of pity. You can't make him fire me. My life doesn't matter. But my son is in the ICU waiting for money to save his life. I really need this job. Linda's wails were heartbreakingly convincing. The crowd murmured in sympathy, turning on me. She's in such a horrible situation. How can you take away her livelihood? Just because of your own insecurities? Yeah, this is all in your head. The poor woman is desperate. Give her a break. You're 8 months pregnant. Don't you have any compassion? Seeing the tide turn in her favor, Linda clutched at the hem of my gown. Mrs. Lewis, I promise I'll stay far away from Mr. Lewis. I'll only do my work. Please just let me keep my job. When I remained unmoved, Zachary's patience finally snapped. Jane, this has gone too far. Linda is just a pitiful woman. I've gone too far, I scoffed. My eyes locked with his. Zachary, the disgusting things you've done are far worse than anything I could imagine. Don't force me to say them all out loud. Flash of panic crossed Zachary's face before he blustered, his voice rising. What have I done? Everything I do is to make you happy, to give you and our child a better life. Linda wiped her tears and stood up, pointing a trembling finger at me. How can you say that about him, Mrs. Lewis? While you've been here resting and being cared for, Mr. Lewis has been working himself to the bone, eating meals and staying up all night. What could he possibly have done? He's a fool for loving a woman like you. I let out another cold laugh, my gaze shifting between the two of them. Working late into the night. Are you sure it was work or something else? Filthy. The two of you know better than anyone. With that, I threw the divorce papers at his chest and turned to leave. Just then, my mother-in-law burst into the room breathless. Jane, what's going on? I heard you want a divorce. What happened? She grabbed my arm, her face etched with concern. Did that bastard Zachary do something to hurt you? You tell me and I'll handle him. My mother-in-law Martha stared at the divorce papers fluttering on the hospital bed like white flags of surrender. She was a woman of traditional values, but she loved me fiercely, partly because I had been the one to care for her during her hip surgery while Zachary was conquering the American market. Jane, Martha whispered, her voice trembling as she looked at her son. What did he do? Zachary, tell me right now, what did you do? Zachary looked like a man being crucified. He fell to his knees, not in front of Linda this time, but in front of me. Mom, I swear, I've done nothing but work. Jane is. She's convinced I'm cheating because I'm away. She saw a ring and just snapped. I don't know why. I looked down at him, his handsome face twisted in a mask of wounded innocence. It was the same face that had whispered, I love you, over 1,000 Zoom calls. The ring, Zachary, I said, my voice as cold as the morgue in the basement of this hospital. Tell them about the ring. Linda, still wiping fake tears, chimed in. It's a 9-carat D flawless diamond, Mrs. Lewis. It's worth a fortune. Any woman would be. Shut up, I snapped, and the sheer venom in my voice silenced the entire ward. I picked up the velvet box. The diamond was massive, catching the fluorescent hospital lights and shattering them into 1,000 rainbows. It was beautiful. It was a masterpiece. Zachary told you all he had this custom made by a top designer, right? I asked the room. The onlookers nodded, their faces still etched with judgment. I turned the ring over in my palm. The designer is Julian Vane. He only makes 12 pieces a year. Each one is themed. This one is from his Second Chance collection. I looked Zachary in the eye. He flinched. Inside the band, I continued, there is an engraving. Zachary probably didn't even check it. He was too busy making sure the certificate was in my name to notice what the metal actually said. I handed the ring to Martha. Read it, Mom. Read it out loud. Martha pulled out her reading glasses, her hands shaking. She squinted at the inner rim of the platinum band. Her face went from confusion to a deep, sickly pale. To my forever young Lily, Martha read. Her voice was barely a whisper. May our years in the sun be longer than our nights in the dark. My heart, my life, my L. The room went deathly silent. My name is Jane, I said to the crowd. My middle name is Catherine. There isn't an L in my entire genealogy. I looked at Linda, who had suddenly stopped sobbing. Her eyes were darting toward the door. And do you know what's even more interesting? I asked, stepping closer to the old woman. 9 carats. It's a very specific weight. Zachary, why did you choose 9? Zachary stammered. It was the biggest one available. It was a symbol of 9 years. I cut him off. The 9 years you've been seeing her. Not the secretary Linda, who started 3 months ago, but the woman you met in college while I was working 2 jobs to pay for your MBA. The whispers in the room changed instantly. The spoiled wife narrative was crumbling, replaced by the voyeuristic thrill of a scandal. Jane, you're imagining things. Zachary shouted, standing up. Lily is just a name the designer used. It was a pre-owned setting. I got a deal on it. A multimillionaire buying a deal for his anniversary while his wife is in the high-risk pregnancy ward? I laughed, and it sounded like breaking glass. You're losing your touch, Zach. I turned to Linda. You said your son is in the ICU? What's his name? Linda faltered. His name? It's Leo. Leo, I nodded. And he's at St. Jude's? Or maybe the General Hospital? The General, she blurted out. Strange, I said, pulling my phone from my robe pocket. I called the General Hospital 10 minutes ago. There is no Leo Smith in the pediatric ICU. But there is a flight manifest for a Leo Lewis, flying first class to Los Angeles this evening, accompanied by his mother, Linda Lily Rossi. Linda's face didn't just flush, it withered. You've been playing the pity card well, I said, my voice rising. The gray wig is a nice touch. The prosthetic makeup to give you wrinkles? Brilliantly executed. But you forgot one thing, Lily. You and Zachary have been living together in New York for 3 years. I have the doorbell camera footage from your brownstone. A private investigator is a wonderful investment when your husband suddenly volunteers to move overseas. In one swift motion, I reached out and yanked the silk scarf from Linda's neck. Beneath the carefully applied theatrical makeup and the high-collared shirt was a neck as smooth and youthful as mine, adorned with a matching platinum chain. A gasp ripped through the ward. She's a girl, someone shouted. She's not a grandma at all. Lily, no longer Linda, stripped off the gray wig, her long chestnut hair falling over her shoulders. The pitiful woman was gone. Standing there was a woman in her late 20s, beautiful, sharp-eyed, and radiating malice. So you knew, Lily said, her voice dropping the shrill, elderly tone. It was now low and sultry. She looked at Zachary, then back at me. If you knew, why did you wait until today? Why the drama, Jane? Are you that desperate for an audience? Zachary tried to intervene. Lily, don't. Shut up, Zach, Lily hissed. She's already ruined it. The old secretary bit was your stupid idea anyway. I told you we should have just stayed in the States and stopped sending her these pathetic trinkets. I felt a sharp contraction in my abdomen. The pain was searing, a reminder of the life inside me that was currently being bathed in the stress of their betrayal. I gripped the railing of the hospital bed, my knuckles white. I waited, I panted. Because I wanted to see how far you would go. I wanted to see if you would actually bring her into my hospital room. I wanted to see if you would let her kneel on the floor and lie to my face about a dying child. I looked at Zachary, whose face was now a mask of pure terror. You didn't just cheat, Zachary. You used our anniversary to hand me a ring you bought for her. I saw the receipt in our shared cloud drive 3 weeks ago. You bought 2 rings. A 5-carat one for me, and this 9-carat one for her. But you got the boxes mixed up, didn't you? Zachary's eyes went wide. The ultimate irony. His own greed and carelessness had exposed him. Jane, I can explain. Zachary stepped forward, his hands reaching for me. The 5-carat it was a placeholder. I wanted to give you the best one. Lily she's a mistake. A business arrangement. A business arrangement that has a son with our last name? I screamed. The monitors next to my bed began to beep frantically. My blood pressure was spiking. Nurses started rushing in, realizing the family spat had turned into a medical emergency. Out, the head nurse shouted. Everyone out. The patient is in distress. Martha, my mother-in-law, didn't leave. She walked over to Zachary and, with the strength of a woman who had spent 40 years working on a farm, delivered a slap that echoed like a gunshot. You are no son of mine, Martha whispered, her voice shaking with disgust. Go. Take your Lily and go. If I see you near Jane again, I'll be the one to sign your death warrant. Never mind the divorce. Zachary tried to speak, but the security guards, who had been watching the drama unfold, weren't feeling sympathetic. They grabbed him and Lily, dragging them toward the elevators. Lily was screaming about her rights, while Zachary just looked back at me, his face a blur of regret and cowardice. Jane, stay with me, Martha said, grabbing my hand as the doctors swarmed. Focus on the baby. Just the baby. The next few hours were a blur of pain and white lights. The stress had triggered premature labor. Between the screams and the haze of epidural, I kept seeing the sparkle of that 9-carat diamond on the floor. It had fallen during the scuffle. A stone that represented 9 years of lies. At 4:02 a.m., my daughter was born. She was tiny, her lungs let out a sharp, piercing cry that filled the quiet room. When the nurse placed her in my arms, the world outside, the cheating husband, the mistress, the public humiliation, ceased to exist. She looks just like you, Martha whispered, leaning over us, her eyes red from crying. No, I said, kissing my daughter's forehead. She looks like a fresh start. 3 days later, I was still in the hospital, but the room was no longer public. I had been moved to a private suite, paid for by the liquidation of the joint savings account Zachary had forgotten I had the password to. A man in a sharp suit sat in the chair opposite my bed. My lawyer, Robert. The papers are signed, Robert said, laying a folder on the table. Zachary tried to fight the infidelity clause, but once the private investigator's files were leaked to his board of directors, they forced his hand. He's been asked to resign from the firm. Without his salary and with the morality clause in his contract triggered, he's looking at a very lean few years. And Lily? I asked, nursing my daughter. Fired, obviously. And since she was using company funds for those ICU bills she claimed to have, the company is suing her for embezzlement. She won't be flying first class to LA anytime soon. Martha entered the room, carrying a bouquet of sunflowers. She looked at Robert, then at me. He's downstairs, Jane. He's been sitting in the lobby for 48 hours. He wants to see the baby. I looked down at the sleeping girl in my arms. Her name was Eloise. Does he have the 5-carat ring? I asked. Martha blinked. What? Tell him, I said to Martha, that if he wants to see his daughter, he has to leave the 5-carat ring with the security guard. Tell him it's the entry fee. Martha looked confused but did as I asked. 10 minutes later, she returned with a smaller, yet still expensive, velvet box. I handed it to Robert. Sell it. Put the money into a trust for the children of single mothers in the high-risk ward. Let his guilt fund someone else's survival. And Zachary? Martha asked. Should I let him up? I looked out the window. The sun was rising over the city, casting long, golden shadows across the streets. No, I said. Tell him the Lily ring had it right. May our years in the sun be longer than our nights in the dark. My son is here. He's just a shadow now. Zachary Lewis never saw his daughter that day, or the day after. By the time he managed to get a court order for visitation months later, he was a different man. The charm was gone, replaced by the bitter exhaustion of someone who had lost everything for a lily that withered the moment the money dried up. I stood on the steps of the courthouse, Eloise in a carrier against my chest. Zachary stood a few feet away, looking at the child he barely knew. She's beautiful, Jane, he said, his voice raspy. She is, I replied. I'm sorry, he whispered. The ring, the secretary, it was all a mess. I thought I could have everything. I looked at him, and for the first time, I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel ice. I felt nothing. He was just a stranger who had once shared my bed. You did have everything, Zachary, I said. You just didn't realize that everything isn't measured in carats. It's measured in the truth you tell when no one is looking. I walked to my car, Martha waiting in the driver's seat. As we pulled away, I looked back in the rearview mirror. Zachary was standing alone on the pavement, a small, shrinking figure in a world that had moved on without him. Where to? Martha asked, smiling. Home, I said. And don't forget, we have a lunch date with the designer, Julian Vane. Martha laughed. The one who made the ring? The same, I said, a small, knowing smile playing on my lips. He's making me a new piece. A necklace. With one small, perfect stone for every year I've been free. The car moved into the light, leaving the shadows of the past behind. The 9-carat ring was a memory, but the sparkle in my daughter's eyes was the only diamond I would ever need.